This is the Tango Alpha Lima podcast.
They call me crazy cause I'm facing all my giants. They try to scare me into thinking I can fight it. They tell me I should never even think of trying. But that's just me, I'm gonna live out in defiance.
Welcome, Alphas. Thanks for joining us. Stacy's going to be back with us next week. She is currently right now filming a new season of her After Action show. Normally we make jokes, but her show's awesome and I don't want to make fun of anything. So
have you seen any of the posts that she's done about the show? It looks like she's got some really cool guests. She always does.
She shared a post this morning that I saw that's about veteran homelessness, which is something I'm super interested in. It's such a topic. There was a guy in my area, Jim Lindenmeyer, actually, that had a whole festival called the Ghost Festival that was talking about how homeless veterans aren't seen, and has a big heart for homeless veterans in my area. And so this is something that's been on my mind for a long time.
I saw a post that looked like she had some Native Americans in it, and maybe a few elders and stuff too. So I don't know what story she's telling, but I'm excited to learn more about it.
I am so fascinated by Native American culture that it's like problematic. Like I have my whole life, I have always loved. We did a whole like. It was almost like a study that we had to do, and we had different things we had to pick on, and I ended up getting Geronimo, just sheer dumb luck, and I started reading, and I was reading so much about it that I didn't do the project because I was I was just learning and enjoying it. It was the first time I think that my mind was ever like, oh my gosh, this is fascinating.
I was stationed at Fort Riley, Kansas, and so you had the rolling hills there. It's like before Kansas gets incredibly flat to the west, before the Rockies, start to come into Colorado. And it was always like, you felt like there was going to be a herd of buffalo, like just on the other side of the hill. And I just watched Dances with Wolves recently, and that movie is so good. They did such a good job of, combining the different arcs of the narrative of the time and showing how, you can come in and really learn about another's, culture and understand it better and become part of it. And then by the time the soldiers come back through at the end of the movie, like you're all of a sudden, against the soldiers because of how out of tune they are in their behaviors and how they were working. And so they did such a good job of taking you on a journey of understanding, I thought.
I love when a movie sort of teaches you to always assess who the savage is in a situation, because it's not who you expect all the time. And that movie was never done in a preachy way. It was more like an acknowledgement that there was something beautiful there that, that was in danger. So I need to rewatch that movie. You just stole about two and a half hours of my life by bringing that movie up.
Worth it.
So today, our guest is retired Marine Corps. Is the Marine Corps still a thing? Master Gunnery Sergeant Robert Yarnall. So he's the Vice President of Development and Impact for the Robert Irvine Foundation. The Robert Irvine. What is going on with me today? I've got Dances with Wolves dancing around in my head. But he serves as a team lead for the Foundation's Face the Fight initiative, integrating suicide intervention strategies into the Foundation's core programs. And American Legion is also a Face the Fight coalition partner, so we're going to have a lot to discuss. But first...
Yeah, so I'm definitely looking forward to learn a little bit more about those initiatives from his perspective. But April is Children and Youth Month for the American Legion. So during this month, we celebrate the many ways we support America's next generation at the national, state, and local level through programs, scholarships, and education. So important. American Legion family members are encouraged to show their local communities our dedication to young people by hosting youth activities or by becoming involved in programs and organizations that support young people. So, I have a little anecdote that kind of fits nicely in this. I went a couple weeks ago and spoke at the 65th Legislative Conference to the Be the One Wellness Committee, kind of sharing my advocacy work in the mental health space for veterans. And I took my 14-year-old daughter on the first ever trip with me to go. And so it was really excited. She's 14. So, I think last year she had civics in 7th grade. So it's just like, it was a perfect short trip, very much palatable for the type of experiences, that you want to cultivate in your daughter. And so she got to come see me present, to the committee, take part in kind of our civic duty. And I had all these awesome dad moments to kind of explain, more about my work that she could understand at her age now, and then apply it, to the governmental process, and how the Legion is there to be able to use our voice to help, shape what happens in the country for veterans. And so it's just, honestly, it was one of the most, if not the most special trip, because I got to bring my daughter and then just see the lens of the world through her eyes, like being 2 feet behind her, looking up at, Abraham Lincoln, and just looking at the wonder and amazement, and knowing that there's seeds that are getting, planted right there, where now she wants to go back and meet up with our post commander's wife, who runs the auxiliary, and they're talking about launching a junior auxiliary where she'll be a part of that process. And what are the things that she's interested in, and how can we map that to the opportunities? And we're trying to chart a path for her to Girl State and a potential scholarship, to Auburn. And so I just think it's really cool, because this something wasn't even on my radar a few years ago. And now I see how just by being a part of it and serving and having my passions, it's creating pathways for her and her friends potentially.
You might have yourself a little junior auxiliary president running around the house. She might technically rank higher than you. You might have to ma'am her.
She's vice president of her student council, and I got to go and see her do her speech. And
oh, that's so cool.
She's got.
It's hard when your kids hit teen to impress them. To have opportunities to show them, the effect that we have. And I think that's one good thing about what, the American Legion does, and what we try to do as individuals is to make sure that we're doing something and involved in things that have a positive impact on other people. And it's a good thing to show the kids that. So
I might have got some cool dad points for checking her out early on Friday and missing Monday and going on a trip.
I just use like donuts. I'm not going to put all the work in. I'm just going to
bribe
my children with sugar.
You can learn more about how you can get involved at legion.org/youth, and we'll also have links in the show notes.
All right, Alphas, please stick around. We'll be back with Robert Yarnall right after the break.
The American Legion is raising awareness about PTSD and veteran suicide by offering hope, camaraderie, and support.
Be the one to help end veteran suicide.
Be the one to save one veteran.
Be the one to ask a veteran in your life how they're doing.
Be the one to reach out when a veteran is struggling.
Go to betheone.org and help the American Legion end veteran suicide.
Will you be the one?
All right, today we are joined by Robert Yarnall, Vice President of the Robert Irvine Foundation and Master Gunny Sergeant in the United States Marine Corps. We don't say former because you're always a Marine, but welcome to the Tango Alpha Lima podcast.
That's my privilege to be here, and thanks for having me.
Robert, it's so great to have you. Looking forward to digging in with all the great work that you guys are doing at the foundation. But you served 25 years in the Marine Corps, and then also spent nearly 2 decades teaching civics, I believe. So tell us a little bit about your time in the Corps, and then that transition from leading Marines to shaping young minds, and what really kind of drove you to step into the education after your military career.
Okay, well, I started obviously right out of high school. I joked because I met someone this past week that was good friends with the gentleman that we competed for the NROTC scholarship. We actually ran into each other 20 years later working in Quantico. And through conversation, found out that he scored 20 points higher than I did on SATs. And he went to Villanova. I went to Paris Island. I joked with him at that point because he was a lieutenant colonel. I said, "Don't worry, sir. Someday you'll be able to park as close to the PX as I could," because E9s we had parking next to the generals. So great relationship, and that's what really got it started. Came in at 17, turned 18 in basic training. Went into logistics and embarkation and loved the field. Wound up deploying on Westpac, and from Westpac, we got our marching orders to go from Hong Kong into the Persian Gulf, where we spent 102 straight days doing circle squares, dropping anchor, and being in general quarters for the most part. Came back, did some rework on the ship, and picked up another battalion and took them back over and spent another 96 days over in the Persian Gulf during the first Gulf War. Returned from that and was looking at the possibility that maybe going into embassy duty, or possibility of putting together a warrant officer package in the next year or so. And instead, I got orders on recruiting duty, which sent me back to Pennsylvania, where I was originally from. And through working with the high school students and recent graduates, really fell in love with helping those young people find their trajectory in life. Got talked into, instead of putting in a warrant officer package, putting in a career recruiting package. So I wound up spending 8 years. To wrap that recruiting piece up, my wife finally talked me into going on a cruise to Hawaii last month. That's the first time I've been on a ship, and I told all the folks, look, the last time I sailed from San Diego, it turned into more than a 3-hour tour. So beware. But while we were in Hawaii, I got to connect with my last personal recruit, who was still on active duty. He's a Warrant Officer 5, getting ready to retire in May. So kind of took that full circle just last month, which was awesome. And, getting to connect with him and staying connected with so many of those young Marines that I helped get started. And they've had fabulous careers and great leaders for many of them.
If you'd went warrant, though, you wouldn't have had to do any work at all.
Yeah. I don't know, the warrant officers I worked for or throughout my career who were great inspirations for my thoughts have gone that way, but they were great leaders and great teachers among them. Some of the best people I ever had the opportunity to work for. Many continued and then went to that LDO and retired as lieutenant colonel. So they really took it the full spectrum and kind of helped guide me in my career. And I really am grateful for their guidance.
I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I was because I then transferred into the reserves because I had some younger sons. The oldest, I missed a lot of his early years because of being deployed. And I moved into the reserve force, went back to school and got my teaching degree. I was about 6 months from graduating and supposed to do my student teaching, got activated for a year and a half, got my teaching degree finished, got hired, graduated in December, got hired right away, started in January, only to get orders again in August, which was all great. But so although I spent 25 years and basically split half and half, it was a little bit more on active side because of being called back and getting to serve in that active capacity again. So back to your question of why, how did I transition into that? Working with the young people on recruiting duty and seeing that they lacked some of that guidance that I was fortunate to have, both through my high school and my military career. That was a motivating factor to get into education. And I coached for many years as well. So you got to have an impact both in the classroom and on the athletic field, working with those young folks, and many who have then chosen to go on and join the military and start their own military careers.
Well, thank you for that. I was just going to say real quick, Joe, before you jump in there, that probably of all the things that you've done, those 20 years, like serving the young folks and having that storied career, to be able to come in and pour into them and give them, the leadership principles, discipline, but also compassion and support that comes with that as well, because it's not just a hard totalitarian, line of military rigidity. Those are just the foundations of discipline that allows us to really connect and support and lead. And so just really exceptional to hear, and probably nobody better than a master gunny sergeant to go and pour into the youth of tomorrow and help them get into a great path, and a path that's individualized and calling to them. So thank you for your investment in the future of this country, as you've also invested in protecting it and serving it all those years.
No, it's my pleasure.
Changing lives one knife hand at a time. I skipped all the hard work and earned respect to get a good parking spot. I was with 2-1 Marines in Fallujah in 2004 and got a nice parking spot out of it. So I cheated a little bit, and that's all right. I call it efficiency.
You earned that spot, Joe.
Well, okay, I'll take it. I won't undermine myself any further, but I just want to say how much it means to have you here. As somebody who absolutely loves the Marine Corps and has invested so much of themselves into it, I love seeing people who take their experiences out into the world and show people, what the Marine Corps really is all about. And that's a bunch of bad A young men and women going out into the world and pushing and showing and lifting each other up. So I just want to say, you've transitioned from shaping these young Marines into shaping, these young minds in the classrooms, and now, veteran sport through the Robert Irvine Foundation. So looking back, what was the most surprising sort of parallel that you found between all these different roles? Because they are different things. And how has your Marine Corps experience sort of uniquely equipped you for this?
One, just the adaptability. Best laid plans are great to the line of departure, and from there, chaos. And how do you
or
adapt?
Semper Gumby?
How do you adapt to that? And I think the ability to lead as a youngster in the Marine Corps, and having great leaders to learn from. And then I think so often, I've heard from so many people, I could never be a Marine because they tell you what to do all the time. I'm like, my experience was very different. Yes, is there times that you need to respond to orders immediately? Yes. If somebody tells you to duck, there's a good reason for it. If you decide to ask why, that might be the last question you ever ask. So yes, is there a time for that absolute response to orders? Yes. But the one thing that I loved throughout, especially my early career, and I always try to be reflective on it, is how did I get to where I'm at? Who really forged my identity and who I became? People took me under their wings, and they showed me, and they taught me. They took the time, they invested their time, when it would have been much quicker for them just to do something than it would have been for them to show me and explain to me why we were doing something. And it's a principle that I've carried with me, whether it was dealing with my young Marines, whether it was dealing with my athletes, whether it was dealing with my students. Anytime I could explain to them why we were doing something, it was a learning opportunity for them. It was a growth opportunity for them. I believe some people are afraid to teach those that are underneath them, or they might take my spot. Well, the reality is I have to train them to take my spot, because on the battlefield, they may have to. One thing I definitely learned from the Marine Corps is that we are all replaceable, because we're all going to move on. It's only a matter of time until you do. So it is our job to prepare that next generation to take our spots and lead forward, because eventually we're going to rely on them to take care of us. I used to joke with my students, look, I'm going to retire someday, and I'm going to require you all to be taking care of me, and there's going to be less of you than there are of us retired. So I want to make sure you get the best education, the best career opportunities that you have, and become the best versions of yourself possible, so that you can be a contributing member of society in a positive way. So I think the parallels really, they go hand over hand with every position that I'm in. And even now, I look at it from the perspective of, how do we help our fellow veterans thrive, not just survive?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the one thing that I use as that guidepost, no matter where I'm at, if I'm in a veteran transition home or homeless shelter, or dealing with folks that are overcoming injuries, I think it's important to remind them that as a military member or as a veteran, you are a 1%er. What do I mean by 1%er? Less than 1% of this country will ever choose to serve, let alone finish that basic training or that officer candidate school and become a service member. Less than 1% of the population completes a marathon. Less than 1% becomes a Division I athlete. Less than 1% become, earn their doctorate. So when I say we are 1%ers in the military, we are in some elite company. You have done something that most people wouldn't even begin to challenge themselves to do. So you are starting out from a place that is already far above your peers. Don't ever forget that. Even if you're down on your luck now, you've already accomplished something, and you did it once, you can do it again. So forget the surviving part. Let's start thriving.
That's incredible. And honestly, that small unit leadership that you focused on at the start of your answer there is, I think, America's most dangerous weapon. I think that we saw a breakthrough of leadership, a breakdown of leadership through every war we've ever fought on the enemy side. And it's always been, as heartbreaking as it is, we have got 2 out of 3 fire team leaders that are 95% as good as our squad leader and can step up. And that's what makes the Marine Corps so nasty to fight. I mean, it's not even a term better than nasty to fight the Marine Corps. And so, that you've taken that and you found a parallel into saying, hey, I would love to one day to look at you and go, you've surpassed me. You're better at this than I, and then we want that for our kids, and we want to be able to lead that on. And that's so, that leading forward that you talked about, that's big. I appreciate that answer. Thank you so much.
Well, and it's a lot of fight, in the Marine Corps, and then there's a lot of fight that happens when you get out, whether it's the Marine Corps, the Army, the Air Force, the transition, the things that folks experience. And so I'd like to talk a little bit about the Robert Irvine Foundation now. Robert, you're the Vice President of Development and Impact for the foundation. And so maybe talk a little bit about the foundation and its mission. And I know that suicide prevention is so big, a large part of the work that you're doing. So maybe even making it, mapping it to, a personal moment that made the mission really personal for you. And that's maybe either in your time in the service or from helping to educate, the future leaders of tomorrow, or maybe even more recently from doing the work. So is there a particular experience or story that really cemented why this work is so important for you?
Yeah, 3 or 4 little snippets that kind of tie that all together. I was asked by the force chaplain while I was in the reserves. They were starting their first critical incident stress management response team. And he had asked me at an event, Mr. Guns, I need a senior enlisted member for this team, and I think you would be a good fit. You're going to say no to the force chaplain? You just can't do that. So getting on board there and having the opportunity to participate, one, helped me deal with some of the loss that we had in the first Gulf War, because we didn't have any programs at that point. You had a funeral service at sea, and you kept on going, and that was the last you really dealt with it. So having the opportunity to talk and be the example, me talking about my loss and experience in those, terrible term, but those debriefs, it also gave the younger people, well, if the Master Guns can talk about it, gave me the feeling that I could. And through those discussions, it was great for me, but it was also interesting that I learned that so many of the people that are dealing with problems from trauma in the military, it's compounded by trauma that they had in their childhood. A lot of correlation there. Then, fast forward.
So you were picking up on this while you were still...
All of our programs are designed around suicide protections. And people don't necessarily understand the difference between the protections and the preventions, but the protections are things like ending isolation, giving people a purpose. The preventions are what kind of strategies can we use, like a crisis response plan, like lethal means safety, that can help prevent that action. That it's not probably the most eloquent way to describe it, but there's a definite difference. Most of our military nonprofits focus on those suicide protections. What can we do to bring people out of isolation, get them back together? give them that sense of support again, and that unity and a sense of purpose. So when they started the Face to Fight Coalition, I talked to Judy and Robert both about that. And absolutely, this is something we can get behind. It fits in with our mission perfectly. And getting into that training and working with our veterans has been great. And it really ties in and was passion for me. I went to one of our first Reuniting the Brave events, and our Reuniting the Brave program brings units back together, not just veterans. It brings units that serve together. We bring in their families. A key element to that is when you're talking about Fallujah, for example, it's been 21 years now since Fallujah. Bringing in those new family members, because some people were single when they got out, some people were married, got divorced, and got remarried, and those new family members don't know much about what their service members did a lot of times, unless their service member told them, but they certainly don't have that connection to the unit family. So bringing them in is hugely important. We bring in our Gold Star families, and unfortunately, we've had to bring in a lot of families of the fallen. Many times those numbers now outnumber those Gold Star families. So what can we do to change that trajectory? And those programs are very much a piece of that. We had a group of 500 Coast Guard rescue swimmers in Gulf Shores last June. And one of the members, it was a message from one of the members whose best friend came to the event. And he came with the idea of saying goodbye to all his brothers and sisters. He was struggling. He thought he could do it on his own. His wife had no idea of what he was struggling with. But getting back together with those unit members changed his trajectory, changed his outlook. He got reconnected with them. He had been isolated out on his own, thinking he was the only one dealing with these types of things. When he got back together and found out that, hey, there's lots of us that are struggling with this. They now have weekly chats, and they plan to get together every 6 months in smaller groups just to stay connected. And that really, along with losing one of my young 15-year-old football players, that rocked my world significantly. No, it wasn't military, but it ties in with what we deal with lethal means safety and locking up our weapons. There's definitely changed the way I locked up mine, with 4 boys of my own. So when you tie all those pieces together, coming back and doing this work that we do at the Robert Irvine Foundation was kind of it was where I felt I needed to be. I loved teaching the kids. I loved coaching. But getting back around our veterans and seeing some of the struggles, and just some that needed some guidance and some support so that they could move forward. It was really a great opportunity to come back into this veteran space or military space. And it was good for me too. I'd be lying if I didn't say getting back reinvigorated some of those pieces of me that I had when I served in the Marine Corps. Talk about that loss of identity when you separate. You go from being known as a Marine, and that goes even to where you go back home. That's the identity you have when you go home on leave. But now all of a sudden I'm not in uniform anymore. How do I deal with that loss of identity? So reconnecting and staying connected with your friends and staying connected with people that you served with, hugely important with that.
I'm so sorry to hear about, your student, and it never gets easier. I recently, one of my Marines that I thought was one of the guys I'd never have to worry about. I don't know the story, and I'm not 100% sure I want to know. It's just heartbreaking, and this stuff never really goes away. I think that the one big misconception is that a lot of veterans or Marines or whoever doesn't have someone to talk to, but sometimes it comes down to them not feeling worthy of expressing it to others, of them not feeling like, I may have 20 people that would drop everything and fly to my house. Me and Adam, I mean, we've only been friends for a year now, and if he needed me, I would fly to him, and I'd be right beside him within a couple of hours. But what would it take for him to say that to me? For him to say, "I need you here, man. I don't know what's going on. I'm really struggling, and my wife doesn't understand, and I don't want my kids to see me like this." Like, how do we teach our guys and girls to reach out?
There's a couple of components to that, and this is so one of the things we're doing with the Face to Fight initiative is we've been a grantee of Face to Fight now. We worked with the folks from UT Health on creating preventive strategies or integrating preventive strategies into our programs. So when we do a Breaking Bread with Heroes, people love to come together over food. So it's a great opportunity for those types of conversations that are reuniting the Braves, where we have people together for 2-3 days. Again, great opportunity to talk about these strategies and educate folks. But it's also important to educate, and I'll go into both of these components here in a second, but it's important to understand, one, I don't know if you're familiar with Brene Brown, but she worked with some special forces soldiers. And I listened to one of her podcasts one day where she was talking about this. And she said it's important to create a brave space. And she uses brave space. She said, I think it's more fitting, and I do too, with our military members. Mm-hmm. And she went to talk to this group, and they basically looked at her like, what are you here to talk to us about? Mm-hmm. And she asked the simple question. So how many of you have ever been in a vulnerable situation that required bravery and courage? And it was quiet for about 2 minutes, and somebody finally spoke up and said, all right, let's get started. And it's true when you think about it, whether you're a fireman getting ready to run into a burning building when everybody else is running out, or you're a police officer going into a live shooter situation, or you're a Marine getting ready to cross that line of departure, or you're getting ready to go down the streets in Fallujah, you're vulnerable.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of bravery. And, I might offend some people when I say this, but when you're at that point, that whole patriotism thing goes out the freaking window. The thing that you're thinking about more than anything is that person on my left and that person on my right. And they're going to make sure I get out of this, and I'm going to make sure they get out of this. It requires the bravery, but it more importantly requires knowing that you have the support of those people on either side of you. So when we talk about making sure that our fellow service members, our friends, our brothers and sisters in arms are able and feel safe to talk about that, we got to create that brave space, and we can't be judgmental. They got to know that we're there to listen, and we're not judging you for whatever it is that is deep rooted or bothering you or you dealt with. Most people know about post-traumatic stress. There's another component of moral injury that I think there's just as many or more issues with moral injury today. Mm-hmm. It's not just the military, but certainly the military has its own realm of that. So how can we help once we can get that brave space? One of the things we do is they call them crisis response plan. You can call it a bad day plan, a crappy day plan. It's not just for somebody that's in crisis, because if you're in crisis already, that may be too late. So to me, everybody should have this. And why? It's a self-management tool. And you got to put some of that ownership back on the individual. It's an individualized self-management tool. How hard is it to do? It's on a 3x5 card. Break it down with literally, what are my triggers? I'll just give a quick, when somebody cuts off my safe driving distance, that's a trigger for me. I've gotten better about saying, they might have an emergency that they're trying to get to, so I don't go into a rage.
That's those convoy ops coming through.
That's the, there's different things that trigger each of us. And we know when we're starting to go down that rabbit hole. But there's also those external factors. It could be financial problems, could be, marital problems, you lost your job, multiple different things that can also spiral us in that direction. So having this type of plan in place is important. Second part of that is what works for you to calm you down and bring you down from that situation. Might be you hit a punching bag, might be you go for a walk with your dog, you go for a run, you listen to heavy metal music, whatever it is that works for you as an individual, that's what you put down on there. Who can you call that is not going to be judgmental? Who can you call that you can reach out to, that you trust, that you can talk to 100% open and have that conversation with them. What are your reasons for living?
Mm-hmm.
Your children, it might be your dog, it might, whatever that component is, but what's your reason for living?
Mm-hmm.
And then the last part, if all this doesn't work, who can I call in an emergency? 988, Vets for Warriors. There's a bunch of different organizations out there that can respond to that. Your professional psychiatrist or counselor that you've been working with, or worst case 911. And that's important. And that's the first component. The second component is, why is veteran suicide so much higher? I don't have all the answers. And people throw out 22 a day. I'll never do that because nobody knows. We know it's based on the statistics, 57% higher. When you look at the statistics, the fact that veterans use a weapon over 70% of the time, and a weapon is 90+% lethal, and when you look at that 57% higher, that's in males. When you look at the female percentage, it's even that much higher. And it comes down to that weapon. So what can we do? One of the things we'll do is when we have people that are at our events, if you need a gun lock box, we will send one right to your house. Lock that gun up. And there's some other organizations that Project Overwatch where they have magnets that you and your buddy can exchange magnets, and you put your phone number on that magnet and it goes on top of your gun lock box, and that's who you call before you open that box because you have that trusted partner. So how can we help each other? That's if we're going to solve this issue,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to be amongst ourselves. Clinicians are there to help and deal with things that I'm not qualified to do.
Right.
But what can we do amongst our own peer groups that we can be more attentive and in tune and provide that that battle buddy that we're there for each other. And you can do that with the magnets. So many people say, well, I don't need a crisis response plan. You don't today.
You don't till you do.
Right. And at that point, the whole thing of, well, I know how to handle weapons safely and all that. I'm like, so do I. But when you're in a crisis mode, you aren't thinking about handling it safely. And that's people are like, well, if I didn't do it that way, I'd find another way. That's not true at all either. I can't tell you how many people that I know one individual personally that had a misfire, changed his whole life, and like, wow, I really didn't want to do that.
It's like the jumper's regret or whatever it is when they jump off the bridge and they're like, this was fixable.
Right. So, having that 5 to 10 minute, just a pause in there to come back to a rational state can save a life. And then we get the help that we need beyond that point. But, just even, take your fire. If you're in a crisis, take your firing pin and give it to somebody else. I know you're not going to want to give your weapon away, and there's laws that each state has that are challenging that way. But give your firing pin to somebody else.
Well, I think what I appreciate is it's a complex problem, and if you think about it from like a pipeline of activities, it's like what are solution sets for different phases of the pipeline. And some of them are preemptive, some of them are crisis, response, some of them prevent the crisis, intervention. And so one of the things that we talked about with one of our previous guests, she's the head of research for student veteran affairs. And she was just, talking about, and I can relate to this as well, not wanting to be, kind of like veteran status or wanting to join other organizations immediately when you transition out. So with all these great things that you're thinking about and the questions you're asking, the programs you come into, how are you guys at the Robert Irvine Foundation kind of solving the problem of, the barriers to entry and getting people to participate in these activities?
Well, the Reuniting the Brave is a pretty easy one once you get to connect with the people. And the biggest challenge there, and I've asked this question to some of the folks that have been there, is like, so this is the first one you come to. Why didn't you go in the past? And I opened up the floodgates. I said, look, I have a friend that won't go home because he was, a stud athlete in high school, a Marine, and now he's overweight and embarrassed to go home. But that opened the floodgates. Everybody's like, well, I was concerned they thought I was an asshole as a staff sergeant, or I was the PT stud and now I'm not. So once you can overcome those barriers and get people together, they reconnect, and it just is fabulous to watch. It's one of those where when you listen to those conversations, I had a Gold Star spouse at one of our events, and she's like, I know here I can talk about this. I can't really talk about this anywhere else. So having that place where they can get back together and talk about their shared experiences, and really find out that, hey, we don't really care about anything back. We're just happy that you're doing well now and reconnecting. Having different resiliency types events, like even with our golf tournament, yes, it's a fundraiser, but we always bring in around 50 veterans that bring them into play to participate in the day's activities, just to reconnect and have that sense of purpose. We are also big on, we did 3 different events out in Las Vegas where we partnered with organizations. We brought in a lunch or a brunch, and we participated in their activities. One was MVP. We did a workout with them. We did Forgotten Not Gone. They have a trike brigade that they take veterans on trikes throughout some of the parks in the northern part of Las Vegas. And we also did a homeless and transition shelter, U.S. vets out there, where, that's meeting the veterans where they're at. Because some are going to go, they love going and doing that trike thing. Some love going and doing the MVP thing. It's not our fathers and grandfathers where they all came back, went to the VFW or local American Legion chapter. It's changed. So how do you meet them where they're at? And that means we'll take our program to them, which is great. And it's a great partnership because we also learn what they're doing and we can amplify it. And, there's no one size fits all. For some, hey, golf is a great release. Some, that trike is great. Some, the MVP where they do workouts, and then they're also involved out there with not the boxing, but the ring fighting. I'm drawing total blank right now.
Well, I love the idea of meeting them where they're at through a multidisciplinary assortment of events.
And that's huge. Look, we can do so much more collaborating. Anybody that looks at it as competition is in the wrong business.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It just irritates me. And like I said, I did this as a consultant for many different nonprofits, and there were a lot that I would just have to be like, I'm sorry, I can't work with you anymore because you are in it for the wrong reason.
Mm-hmm.
But there are so many that are doing such great things, and the more you get out there, the more you learn what people are doing. And then I always say it's just an extra tool in the tool belt. How can we resource somebody? I had a woman that her husband, he was on the dust off crew and had some serious loss, and he's the only surviving member left of his crews, and has some serious wounds of his own, but he won't go get help. I said, well, I have an organization that I've worked with, Next 18, that does these great golf camps. Maybe he'd go to that because he loves to play golf. Anything that you can do to reach them. So we love to partner at the Irvine Foundation, and it's a great way to collaborate, provide more resources to our veterans, and just reach more people that way too. And how do you get those folks that are out in those remote areas to bring them in? It's a challenge that we all have to work together on if we're going to do it. And the coalition for Face to Fight now is up to 258 members, and that's huge. It's one of the best coalitions that I've seen in terms of. We just had our first convening in San Antonio last week, and the collaboration that took place there was some of the best that I've seen, and that's promising for me that we can actually start making a difference. And people are all working on different projects with it, so it's not like it's a one size fits all. It's, hey, what do you do? What do you do well? And how can we integrate these components to what we do well? Not trying to create something that's outside your lane.
And I mean, I think the impact is immeasurable. I mean, you don't always know when someone has been on the precipice and they back off. And knowing that the support system is there is part of the deterrent, even if it's not used. It's like money in the bank, Master Gunny, and it means the world to me as a corpsman. You know where my heart's at. I like taking care of Marines. I like taking care of people, and what you're doing means the world to me. And I can't tell you how much we appreciate the time that you've spent with us today. But I do want to, before we sign off, if there's somebody listening who wants to support Face the Fight or Robert Irvine Foundation, what's the best way for them to get involved?
Yeah, I mean, reach out to us through robertirvinefoundation.org. Again, if you have an organization that you would like us to come and partner and do a lunch or a brunch, and we can do some, crisis response planning, lethal means safety planning. It's a training. I mean, the more you learn how to do it, the more you can also help other people, which is key. But help you create a plan and then help you be able to do that with others. So we're happy to work with any organization and understand that suicide doesn't have any boundaries. It doesn't discriminate. Doesn't matter whether
social
you're wealthy,
class, race.
It goes across every single thing. It doesn't know any boundaries at all. So, don't think that there's nobody that's immune to it, whether it's somebody you've known, it's almost weekly that I either know someone or one person removed. It's how do you reach out to more people? And that is something that's going to take a collective effort and educating, talking about it. Talking about it doesn't create it. Talking about it is the only way we're going to solve it. Make it less stigmatized. Make it as, hey, it's just like if you got the flu, you need to get some help. And creating that brave space for our veterans to be able to have that conversation.
Outstanding. You're a rock star, brother. We appreciate you.
Thank you so much for visiting us today, Robert. Thank you for breaking the barriers and being able to talk about these things and showing the next generation how to do it for where you're casting the net and driving those conversations. And it's just through having conversations like it here today. So we're also grateful to the Legion that allows us the opportunity to come here and use our voices to amplify all the great work that's being done. So thank you so much. Alpha, stick around for some Scuttlebutt after the break.
Family and community engagement. The American Legion meets the unique needs of local communities. We are veterans strengthening America. We are the American Legion.
Okay, Alphas, we hope you had a great break. Now it's time for some Scuttlebutt. Joe, what you got for us?
So in February, a U.S. Army colonel's great-grandson returned a good luck flag to the nephew of a Japanese soldier who carried it into battle during World War II, which and I'm no history buff, pretty sure that one was the one that was after World War I.
One, yes.
Yeah, okay. So Chris Dorsey, an American Army veteran and great-grandson of the late Colonel Thomas Rogers, returned the flag to the family of Fumio Kudo during a ceremony in Japan. The Obon Society, or Obon Society, I forgive me if I messed that up, an Oregon-based nonprofit that... Say again?
Obon sounds good.
Obon sounds good. We're going to go with Obon. So the Obon Society, an Oregon-based nonprofit that helps U.S. veterans and their families return old war trophies in the in Japan Bereaved Families Association, helped facilitate the exchange. So the flag, a Yosagaki Hinmaru, was a small Japanese national flag signed in ink by friends and family of Kudo. So Japanese troops commonly carry such tokens of good luck secured close to their hearts in their chest pockets of their uniforms. Probably the exact same thing in their culture of us with pictures and keepsakes that we keep inside our flak jackets and things like that. But unfortunately, Kudo died at the age of 24 during the intense battles in the closing days of World War II on the Philippine island of Luzon. Dorsey of Dahlonega, Georgia, which is right down the road from me, during the... I don't know exactly where Dahlonega is, but this story's not about me anyway. Is unsure how the flag came into his great-grandfather's possession, but he found it folded and carefully preserved among the military memorabilia that he received 6 years ago following his great-grandfather's passing. So, in my spiritual life, I practiced the ways of my Native American ancestors, Dorsey said during the ceremony. In one of our ceremonies in July 2024, a lost and confused spirit came to one of our tribal elders and myself, and we soon learned that it was the spirit of a Japanese soldier. At the suggestion of a Lakota elder in his community, Dorsey contacted a Shinto priest who explained the significance of the Japanese flag He explained to me that their belief is that the spirit of that soldier is with that flag and will roam the earth lost and confused until he returns home, Dorsey said. Fumio Kudo's nephew, Ken Kudo, thanked Dorsey for returning his uncle's legacy to Japan. My family and I are filled with astonishment and deep gratitude. Members of Bereaved Families Association plan to visit Arlington National Cemetery in September to pay respects to American soldiers buried there, including the grave of Colonel Thomas Rogers. This is so cool because it's so when you're at war, you realize that you're not at war with the individual people that are living in a country. You know, there's so many layers to what's happening, and in a perfect world, 50, 60, 70 years down the road, you know, there are opportunities and sometimes earlier than that to move on and to shake hands with some of these people that you fought against. And I mean, we saw a lot of that with you know, people were traveling back to Vietnam. You know, I make sort of offhand comments all the time about the house in Fallujah was like a dysfunctional childhood home because in a lot of ways we grew up there. And so, you know, imagine having a lot of your formative core memories in a war zone and being able to make peace with that. I mean, I'm sure there's something really incredible. And then you have a story like this where you have a symbol of that thing that you get to return to another family. Like that's huge.
I think one of the things that jumps out to me is the Obon Society and the Japan Bereaved Families Association. So just the fact that those, I mean, to me, those are kind of like obscure things to have a nonprofit around because I wouldn't really think about it. But, you know, just the passion to be able to solve those problems that nobody else is solving, and then creating organizations to be able to have, you know, conduits. Because if you, I mean, just the process of thinking like, okay, well, I found this thing and this is really cool. I want to get it back to where it goes. Like, how do I even do that? And then the other thing that jumps out is this Native American ancestors ceremony in July 2024, when a lost and confused spirit came to one of the tribal elders, and we soon learned it was a spirit of a Japanese soldier. That's pretty wild. I mean, I know we've had some guests on here talking about, you know, strange things happening within the spirit realm as it pertains to military. And what do you think? What do you think about that?
Well, so me personally, I think that sometimes you do get a feeling off of things. There's a reason why people walk into places that have historical or tragic sentiment and can feel those places. I mean, you know, walking into some of these old prisons or some people, I've not been there, but you know, stories of people that walked into some of the concentration camps from World War II and stuff like that. They were like, there's a tangible feeling of something there. The closest I've ever been was, and it wasn't everywhere, but you know, some of the grave sites in Savannah, Georgia. I mean, it wasn't anything that you could really point out. It was just a feeling of unease. Right. So, you know, as a guy who loves him some Jesus a little bit, I think you know, I can admit that sometimes things don't feel right, and I'm not dumb enough to think that I know everything.
No, that's really good. And then, I mean, I think the other thing that jumps out to me is, you know, just the process of friends and family signing that flag, carrying it in your pocket, and then it making it all the way here, and then to come all the way back, you know, the healing that happens with that, the meaning for the family, the fact that this is happening like 80 years later. And so I just love it. So
because cool, how would you even go about? I mean, that's the thing that's impressive is that I'd like to think that in that situation, I would be like, I got to do something about this, but I don't know. I wouldn't even know where to start, and to follow through enough to get it done. That's impressive.
The action to say, you know what, no longer am I just going to like hold this on the wall as a trophy. I'm going to provide generational healing. That's pretty cool.
Heck yeah. Well, we'll have links in the show notes for this. And, you know, so if you got any cool add-ons or anything you want to send, feel free to let us know, because this is super interesting to me, and I wouldn't mind If somebody has some other really cool stories like this, I like stuff like that. But I think Adam's got a little something about.
Speaking of
It's
cool
not
stories,
foosball. It's
yeah.
not foosball related.
Well, we got a big birthday celebration coming up. The American Legion Baseball is going to celebrate its centennial year this year. For 100 years, this program has enjoyed a reputation as one of the most successful and tradition-rich amateur athletic leagues. Since its inception in 1925, the league has had millions of players. That's incredible, including countless who have gone on to play in college and professional baseball, with 82 inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame. Today, the program registers teams in all 50 states, plus Canada, which is likely to become the 51st state. No, I'm just
kidding.
Players learn citizenship through sportsmanship and can earn college scholarships. Major League Baseball and American Legion Baseball don't have a formal partnership, but MLB has helped support Legion Baseball almost since its inception. Legion Baseball has returned the favor, churning out major league prospects since the alumni base has been old enough to be scouted. Some of the sport's most recognizable names are included in our alumni rolls, such as Yogi Berra, played for Fred W. Stockham Post 425 in St. Louis. He's kind of a big one, Joe, in the world of baseball. Yeah. You may also recognize Ted Williams, suited up for a post in San Diego. Frank Robinson led his Oakland, California team to the only back-to-back national championships in program history.
Nice.
Babe Ruth was too old to join when Legion Baseball started, but he spent the final years of his life promoting the program as its director of operations. That's wild. I did not know that. Other prominent players include Justin Verlander, Ryan Sandberg, Roy Campanella, Dusty Baker, Albert Pujols, Greg Maddux and Chipper Jones, the Atlanta Braves.
Jones? Psh, as an Atlanta guy.
Other Legion Baseball graduates have gone on to prominence in other career fields. Former Vice President Dick Cheney played for Post 2 in Casper, Wyoming. Famed journalist and author Tom Brokaw played Legion ball in South Dakota. And the former Secretary of Agriculture, Tom Vilsack, was on a team in Pennsylvania. So as part of the celebration throughout this year, National Headquarters is looking for your Legion baseball memories. If you've ever played, coached, or volunteered, share your memories of American Legion Baseball at legiontown.org. Click on Share Your Story and choose the baseball category. Joe, did you have any idea that Legion Baseball was so rich and storied with some of the greatest names baseball has ever put forth?
I had no idea. I really didn't, and it's a shame. And that's what's so cool about this podcast is that I think we learn more than anybody. And it started me on dozens and dozens of rabbit holes where I've seeked out information because of that. And also one of those very recent memories that happened is our super producer Holly says that the only back-to-back national championship in program history until last year. Apparently last year Post 70 did it too.
Was it back-to-back? Or was it? Yes.
Yeah, that's what
it was. Alabama. Troy.
And if not, we're going to fire Holly. She is
it was either back-to-back or they had a year in between.
Was it back-to-back or was it a year?
I think it was the 22 and 24. Maybe it was 23 and 24. But that post is only like 45 minutes from me. So I'm basically claiming it as
drive over there and find out. We'll wait.
We're sponsoring 2 teams at our post this year. So,
Oh, that's
cool. We have about, 150, 160 members, on the roster, anywhere from 15 to 20 show up, kind of regular at the meetings. But that was really important to the guys. They said, we used to be known around here for having a Legion baseball team, and a lot of the guys that maybe played on the Troy team are from our town, actually. And so scooping up our talent, taking our title, and we ain't gonna stand for it.
Poaching.
Okay, so they had a year in between. So shout out to Oakland Post. You still hold the.
I'm just full of bad intel today.
Well,
I'll check my sources next time.
Okay. Please, so when you're submitting to legiontown.org, click on share your story and choose the baseball category. Please include as much detail as you can. Tell us about the impact of being part of Legion Baseball and include any photos you may have. We'll be sharing some of these stories on legion.org and on social media throughout the coming year of celebration. And once again, we'll have show notes to that legion.org baseball information article in our show notes.
It's kind of awesome to think that the American Legion has played a part in launching Major League Baseball careers. And if the American Legion has played a part in that, what else have we been involved in history? And we don't have access to all these stories because some of this stuff happens very locally. And so a lot of you out there may know things that we just don't know about, that your posts have been involved in. And that's incredible because it's awesome when somebody steps up to do something like returning a war trophy or being a part of something in your local community, and you don't do it for the reasons of getting a pat on the back. You do it because it's just the right thing to do. And doing the right thing, I write, as you know, and one of the things that I mentioned, I do sort of like a little diary thing at the end of every chapter. And one of the things I wrote was, there's more work involved in being encouraging to get a reaction out of people. And it's a slower thing to do. And some people just opt towards being a jerk and getting a quicker reaction, but there's a reward at the end of that you can't touch. And that's kind of what I'm getting at here.
No, I think those are great reflections, for the episode and the things that we kind of talked about. I think the thing for me is, just the kind of like you said, like we learned so much getting to do the show.
Yeah.
And that experience that I got to bring for my daughter, could it have happened some other way? Yeah, potentially, but it didn't. It happened because of the Legion. It happened because the opportunity, to do this veteran advocacy work and go and have a story to tell. And who knows what that trip and that seed that was planted, because, I got to do a lot of like dad conversations with her. And she was receptive because she got a free trip to DC and missed school at it. So she had to listen to my lessons.
Yeah.
And it was like, look, I want to talk about some of these things, but I want you to remember this for the rest of your life. I want you to remember why I teared up when reading the second inaugural address of Abraham Lincoln and why that's so meaningful. Pulled a Joe.
You got a little emotional? You pulled a Joe?
Turned the waterworks on. But what seeds were planted that day, and then being able to, she got to meet Holly. Actually, we got a photo op there. She got to meet, Jeff, the head of, media. And we had a little conversation with the national commander before he went and talked, met Mario, the executive director. And so she doesn't even know that she's, the experiences that she's having. And I just think it's really cool because not just for her, but any time spent with a youth to be able to pour into them.
Yeah.
We don't know what that seed is going to grow into, but we need to plant them.
And seeing your daughter has an impact on other people too, because it's a sobering reminder that we're doing this for them. You know what I'm saying? 30 years from now, what we're doing right now is not going to be really for us. It's going to be for them. Like we're planting trees, hopefully here. And so, yeah, man, good on you. Because you never know when you see, seeing people get involved in nonprofit so young is so humbling to me because I don't feel like I had the bandwidth when I was younger. Like I knew there was a need. I just never knew there were ways to do it. And people like you are leading your children to give people opportunities to do that. And that's pretty impressive, man. Good on you.
But it's beautiful. Like the Legion gives those opportunities. And like my 7-year-old, she's given up her little crown. She won that competition last year. And she got to help do a food drive for a veteran family in need because the Legion Post helped her think through it. I went and I told the guys, I was like, hey, she's got to do a program. What can we do? And everybody wanted to come up with ways to help support and create that pathway. So, you know, if I hadn't been bold enough to say like, hey, maybe I should go to a local meeting and see if these guys are interested in the things that I've been learning and working on. Well, I mean, obviously, the answer is 1,000% yes. And
Yeah.
also, like, we're interested in been doing some things too, Adam, and we want you to get excited and know about those and help us with those.
Yeah.
So I just, you know, my cup overfloweth.
Well, good on you there, young man. When you're no, okay. All right, Alphas, thanks so much for listening. That's a wrap. And you can subscribe to our podcast, our newsletter, or send us mail and guest recommendations at legion.org/Tango Alpha Lima. And we'll see you next week.